my dearest friends. I am very thankful that you decided to turn in and listen to me again. I want to talk to you today about a fascinating topic to me, but I don't know how interested you are, but I'm still going to record it because I think that it's worth trying to ramble about. So I'm going to record this video about writing a novel. Well, it might not be a secret, so to say, for you as well that I've been writing a novel because I wrote about it on my social media. But if you didn't know, here is the full disclosure. I am writing a novel since forever, since about 2012 when I began writing in English. I'm writing a novel, and so it's been more than 10 years now, and I'm approximately somewhere very close to where I started, meaning I do have the first draft of this novel, but it's nowhere near completion. Now I don't know if I will ever finish it, but I've been learning about how to write a novel, and I have learned some things. So this is what I want to share. First of all, I think it's useful to remember that the first draft of the novel or any literary work at all is just the first draft. So whatever first draft you have, it's likely to be hideous, and you will likely need to produce several drafts so that the work is going to be at least tolerable and you will be able to offer it to somebody to read. So at least several drafts of the novel you have to produce before it sort of begins something that is even like can be considered in terms of being offered to somebody to read. So it puts this endeavor of writing a novel on a very, very long timeline. I know some people write novels much quicker than 10 years or more than 10 years, but I think we have to allow ourselves these long writing projects as well. Now, one thing about the novel that makes the novel is that it has at least one character, or better yet, if it has a lot of characters and all of them do develop in the course of this novel. Now, I know that my novel is not like that. I basically have only one constant character in that novel, which is somebody who is telling the story, the narrator, and the rest of the personages sort of fall onto the background. However, if you really count on writing a novel that somebody will be able to read, better think about how the character is going to change, or better yet, a lot of characters are going to change in the course of this novel. Now, the novel has to have an opening, and it is customary to make this opening exciting or interesting. It should be what they sometimes call a hook. It should be something that is promising or threatening or exciting, some sort of development that is going to launch the whole machine of conversation, whole machine of discourse, and whole machine of writing into movement. So you do need to have some sort of hook. And if you begin writing your novel with some generality, like the observation on human nature, or with some sort of middle of experience of your personage, this is okay. However, upon rewriting, if you make the second and third draft of the novel, you might want to put some more dramatic or some more interesting episode of what you have already written and just put it in the beginning. Of course, everything needs to be tied in a way that this beginning doesn't jump out of nowhere or doesn't end rather with this nebulousness, but rather has some sort of continuation. But generally speaking, if you have a hook and there is some suspense in the novel, you will be able to carry the attention of the reader throughout. Even the long texts are going to be read if there is suspense in them. So apart from the beginning, the novel has to have certain stages. All right, it's a classical understanding of the novel that the novel has to develop in a certain way, that it has to culminate, the story has to culminate, and there should be a resolution. And generally speaking, at least in Russian literary tradition, which is probably not the case in the English language traditions, Anglophone traditions around the world, there is a difference between genres. And the novel is different from what is called a long story or повесть, in the way that long story has to have only one line, and the novel generally has many lines. So each of these lines supposedly has to culminate, and it has to have a resolution. So that's what makes a novel entertaining. These are things that make the novel novel. And another thing that could be useful is the novel should be written in the prose rather than you telling a story. What do I mean by that? Is that when we are writing using the nouns and the verbs, our mind and the mind of the reader has all these networks of neural connections that fire up upon whenever we read a word. So if you read a word table, you are likely to imagine some sort of table, and that table is going to be the table that you have in your experience. For example, it's a table from your childhood or the table from your room, the table that you know very well, and you're going to imagine that. So one way of writing the prose, and actually the only way of writing the prose, is instead of telling people what it is that you are trying to tell, you have to paint a picture with nouns and the verbs. Again, something that I could have been doing a better job with my English novel. However, you do have to name things. For example, instead of saying, and the character was sad, right? You have to write something like, and the yellow light sifted through, I don't know, like blinds into the room, and the rain was gathering in the sky or something, right? I'm making stuff up. This is not really a good prose, but you have to paint things as opposed to telling your reader what it is that you are trying to say. So paint things with words. And in particular, the verbs are going to be very useful because they create the sense of action and the sense of development and the sense of going somewhere. Now, of course, the postmodern novels and the contemporary novels broadened our understanding of what the novel is tremendously. After Proust, I think, right, this several volumes, like 7 volumes, I think, In Search of the Lost Time, it became more appropriate to focus on the inner world of the personage, albeit, Proust does have a lot of things that are action in his novel, right? Happenings, events, every meeting becomes an event and things like that with Annabelle and other personages. So you sort of, I think, are allowed to write now exclusively about the inner world of the character, but I think it is extremely important to distinguish the prose from a therapeutic writing when we are writing about our own experiences. This belongs to the journal. This doesn't belong to the novel. It could have some elements to it. So this is my reflection on the novel. I did write several novels in Russian, which was a challenge that I cannot compare to the challenge of writing in English, because, you know, English is not my native language. I don't really quite maybe feel the language this way. But at the same time, I do think that, again, contemporary writing does allow us to write in these non-traditional Englishes, if you will, and ultimately anybody can write, nobody can nobody can sort of be questioned on what they're writing. You are the writer, you are the author, you can decide what you write, how you write it. You can break all the rules regarding the novel. You can break them. The challenge is who is gonna read it. And of course it is a challenge. For me, it is a challenge, for example, because I'm very self-absorbed as the writer. I write about things that interest me. I hardly ever think about the reader. I became more open to the world with all this line of me offering coaching services and of me trying to become a mental health counselor, finally thinking how I can really be helpful to people. But generally speaking, I also think that, of course, our inner worlds are so interesting that they can present themselves by themselves enough of the material to write about. So that's what I have about the novel for today. And if you're writing a novel by any chance, feel free to connect and tell me about your project. I'm really interested to hear what it is that you're writing, what other people are writing, how they write, and let's be in touch. I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.